Right, okay. Just to say, well, first of all, can I just say welcome? We have some new members and some members who may not have attended the Zoom before, so it's nice to see you all here today. And this talk is really is really aimed at the less experienced end of the society. So if you've just joined, this is kind of pitched more at you. But one of the questions that we quite commonly get when people join is, okay, what telescope should I buy? Which is a very difficult question to answer because there's all sorts of options available. But what I want to talk about tonight is one of the options you have, which is not to buy a telescope, but instead to buy a pair of binoculars. Okay, pair of binoculars here. If anybody wants to see, I'm going to try to show you a few things or two. If you just want to put me on speaker view, it'll be easier to see. So, okay, to start with, why am I suggesting binoculars as opposed to a telescope? First of all, they're easier to use than a telescope. If I have to set up a telescope, unless it's a very small one that I can move around, it can take a while. Possibly have to carry it through. The telescope I use, you have to carry it through in about 5 different trips from the garage into the back garden. Whereas these, I can just I can just pick them up and put them. Something strange has happened here. I think somebody's sharing a screen.
It says Jerry is sharing his screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's pressed the wrong button.
Yeah. Let me just stop my share.
That's better.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, ease of use. I can just pick them up. I can walk around with them in a bag like this. Just sling it over your shoulder. Go to wherever you want. Take them out and just point them at the thing that you want to look at. Secondly, they're relatively inexpensive, or can be relatively inexpensive compared with telescopes. Now, along with virtually everything else in life, they seem to have gone up in price a little at the moment, but you still get. I think you get a pair of binoculars like these for around about £100, which is obviously not. It's not nothing, but compared with several hundreds or even thousands that you can end up paying on for a telescope, it's relatively inexpensive. You can get them cheaper than that, but I do question the quality of some of the particular cheap ones. When I was looking at, I managed to see some for about £20, which I think it'd very questionable what the quality of what you're seeing would look like. But then again, they only cost £20. And I think the third advantage is if you decide that astronomy is not for you, you've still got a perfectly good pair of binoculars that you can use for for other things. If you look at things in the daytime, the image which you get is what you see. It's points at the pulse in the distance. When it's daylight, I'll see everything the same as when I'm sat here, just magnified. Okay, so if you're going to pick some binoculars, basically what size should you buy? What kind of thing should you go for? Now, the thing to avoid, I've got some other binoculars here. A fine pair of binoculars, very nice optics. Not much use for astronomical work, or certainly less useful for astronomical work. And the reason is that basically, if you're looking at the sky, it's dark. And because it's dark, what you need to do is gather as much light as you can, which is why we've got the big lenses in front. These particular binoculars, they're a Celestron, that's the make, and they're 15x70 binoculars. Of the numbers, of 15 is the magnification, and then the 50 is the diameter of the lens. And essentially, the bigger the lens, the more light it will gather. And the thing to remember is that really it's the primary function is to gather more light. The secondary function is to magnify. And the reason I say that is because if you simply start magnifying without gathering plenty of light, what's going to happen is that the image you're looking at will get dimmer and dimmer. So you've got to collect the light, and then you can start magnifying it. So, as I say, these are 15x50, and that's the kind of thing that I personally would recommend you to go for. But possibly even less magnification. You can get to 10x50, and you'll still be able to see some very nice sights through them. Just bear in mind that you won't see the sights you see won't look like things taken through the Hubble telescope or even the James Webb when it gets going. But at the end of the talk, I'll just try to show you a few things. I've tried to get some realistic pictures that represent what you would be able to see through these. Okay. We've got the binoculars. This is all well and good. So I can hold them like this. Now, first of all, first problem, they're not massively heavy, but after you've been holding them for a while, they will start to get heavier. And particularly, you're going to be looking up at things in the sky like this. And the other thing that's going to happen if I just try to do that is they're going to wobble about a bit. So if I say try to look at planet Jupiter, which I can see out of my front door at the moment, so I could if it wasn't cloudy, it'll be wobbling about all over the all over the view in the binoculars. Yeah. There are, however, some things you can do to help with that. One of the easiest ones is if you've got a wall or something, or the car roof, if it's parked in the right place, just plonk your elbows down and rest them. That will stabilise it a bit. Sit down in a chair. We'll just steady things. Or even a deck chair is quite useful because it will naturally just tilt you back if you've got one to hand. But the real thing you need to do is really get hold of one of these things, a tripod, and that just brings me on to something else that you should try to get. So another feature when you get your binoculars is try to make sure it's got one of these fittings to put on a tripod. At the very least, there is a screw thread at the front. I don't know if you can see here. I'll just try to take it off for you. which means I'm going to have to put it back on again in a second. So I don't know if you can see that there's a screw thread there, and there's a cap that goes over that if I can ever find it where it went in the garden. But what I can then do is I can fit this mount. This mount came with the binoculars. So try to just make sure if you are buying some that it comes with its own mount. Bear with me a second. So that's gone back on, and now what I can do is I can fit it to my tripod. And as you can see now, I've got the tripod mounted telescope, nice and stable. Now, this particular tripod, I don't think you can see it in any detail, to be honest, over Zoom. It's an Amazon Basics tripod. It's not anything massively expensive. So I think they should be able to get one around about £20. It's not the most stable thing in the world. It goes up quite high. I won't bother trying to extend it, but if you raise it to its full height, it wobbles like jelly, even with the binoculars on. But when it's quite low down, it's pretty stable. What I tried to do was try to put it on either a table, a wall. A wheelie bin is always handy. Just seems to be the right height. Failing that, grab yourself a stool or a chair, sit down and have it at a more modest height. So probably need it about this kind of height, and I can look at most of the things I want to see unless it's something directly overhead. Okay, so that it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Just to explain what kind of thing to look for. As I said, try to get some binoculars like this rather than binoculars like this. This will be great for going down to the bird sanctuary down the road and looking at the whatever it is that's flying about. Perfectly good for that, but these are much better if I want to use them to look at anything in the sky at night. Yeah. So now, I'm just going to very quickly try to, in fact, I need to share my screen, and if I've got everything right, we've solved a problem that's been plaguing us the last few months. So can you see a picture there of the moon?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Picture of the moon. Obviously, that's a really good target for binoculars. What I've tried to do, I've actually grabbed this off the internet. But I'm trying to show you that's kind of the way it will look through your binoculars if you have a pair like mine. If you imagine the size of the black box at pretty much the field of view, and that's about the size of the moon. Quite honestly, it looks sharper than the picture I've got here. That I'm trying to get the size realistic rather than some of the pictures you see claim to be from binoculars, but they must be from some really high-end binoculars if they are. So we've got the moon. It's a very good target. Nice and easy to find as well. The Pleiades is another that's always a good target. That's kind of how they'll look again through binoculars like that, possibly a little bit bigger. But again, that something that's nice and easy to find in the sky. You'll see an awful lot more detail than you will with the naked eye. And then this is Jupiter. Again, this is trying to show you, it will actually look better than that picture there. This is somebody, I suspect what they've done is pointed a phone camera through a pair of binoculars to take this. You may just be able to see the bands on Jupiter.
Not on there.
But you'll definitely see the moons strung out in a line to either side of it. You can see 3 of the moons there. I think Jupiter itself, which is the bright blob, will look clearer than that. It's just the act of photographing it. If you want to get the moons, the planet itself kind of gets blown out in the picture. Now you can see the other planets as well. You can just about make out the rings on Saturn. Certainly you'll get to see the planets. And then this, yeah, the Orion Nebula. This is just a slide showing you how to find the Orion Nebula if you're not sure where it is. And this is roughly the way that you can see it. It's actually it's a lot more blue than that when I look through my telescope. But this was a good picture because it kind of shows you the kind of definition. So you see the nebula there, the Orion Nebula, and that's really a photograph of Orion. So just showing it's the central star in the sword, in that circle of the lower circle, the lower dotted circle. So yeah, that really brings me to the end of what I wanted to cover in the talk. There's just one other thing. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Go to another screen. There is another option of a thing called a spotoscope, which to me is always kind of like half a pair of binoculars. So they're still handheld, or you can mount it on a tripod in the same way as as I have done with the binoculars there. And this is just a spotoscope, which again, I would say it's just one. Just one eyepiece rather than 2. So in a sense, it's kind of like a cut down, specialised version of a telescope.
It's a bit easier on your neck, that, isn't it?
Yeah, because you back more into telescope territory without some of the expense and the weight and what have you that you can come up with the telescope. And also it's it's as easy to use as the binoculars. In that sense. So that really covers what I wanted to run through on the talk. And the purpose, as I say, is really now just to open it up if anybody has any questions, or doesn't have to be about the binoculars in particular. If you just want some advice on anything else connected with astronomy, we've got a lot of people here with a lot of experience.
I'm just going to say, Steve, that I've got a couple of binoculars like the one you just shown, and I can't see very well out of my left eye. So in one sense, it's more suitable for me than actual binoculars, although I've used binoculars over the years. But funny enough, I don't notice that I'm not as well sighted as other people. I've just got used to it. To me, it's the norm that I do most of my seeing out of my right eye, not out of my left eye. But the other thing I was just going to mention, sorry, I don't, Holger, I just want to quickly say, is I once made the mistake, not making the mistake of borrowing the societies one of the telescopes. But with the telescope not being very clever, I took it out as it was starting to get dark, and trying to assemble and get your telescope sorted out when it is dark, it can be quite laborious, and also carrying it out is quite laborious as well. With the binoculars, you just there, take them out, point them at the sky, focus them, you're there. You know, you can't see certain things, but in some sense, it's a lot more handy.
Could I make a couple of points?
Can just, Robin, because Bill's very politely had his hand up for a minute.
Just to carry on from
Just to carry on from David, my missus bought me a monoscope for bird watching, which is really quite useful for astronomy. I mean, it's not brilliant, but it does. But the thing about that is I can use a monopod, $9.99 from Amazon, and you can walk around with it and you're there instantly. A little fiddle with the focuser to make sure you're at infinity, and that's it. You can just keep looking. The advantage with the monopod is you can use it as a walking stick.
Sorry, Robin, I cut you off there.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Couple of points about binoculars, and in particular the optics. I mean, cheap binoculars used to be rubbish. A lot of stuff comes from China these days. Whatever you think about China, they do make damn good optics. And, you know, I've looked through, I'm a bird watcher, and I've looked through many pairs of binoculars in these places we go to. And the cheaper ones, it's very difficult to tell the difference optically between the cheap ones and the rather expensive ones which we bought. The only problem is they're a bit delicate, because the prisms are often held on with a bit of sticky tape or something like that. And if you drop them, that's it. So you have to be rather careful with cheap ones, but the optics can be extremely good. And the other thing which I've heard recommended is that Canon sells some image stabilized binoculars. And I saw a comment from someone that, say, an 8x30 image stabilized binocular is as good as an 8x50 any day, because what you're looking at stands still. Now, if you've got your binoculars on a tripod, that doesn't apply. But if you're just sitting there in a chair and looking at the sky, it's much easier to see things if they don't keep wobbling around. So it's worthwhile looking, you know, if anybody's interested, to find yourself a pair. I think they're still available. I can't remember how much they are, but they are thoroughly recommended for all sorts of purposes.
Andy?
Yeah, going back to what Dave said about binoculars and telescopes, I've found that, like Dave, faffing about trying to get them aligned or whatever, I don't have a go-to, so it's even more faffy. And also, I'm beginning to find as I get older that I can't carry the thing around like a young whippersnapper anymore. It weighs a lot more than I remember it weighing sort of 5-10 years ago. So binoculars, there is a good place for binoculars. Where telescopes have the advantages, of course, that you get much greater magnification, but they are useful in that respect. And what I would say about the image stabilizers is the one that I've come across that I've seen is one that John once brought to the New Inn. I had a look and it was absolutely fantastic. You could hold the thing in your hands, and whatever you were looking at it was as if you were looking down a stabilized telescope on a tripod, and you were just holding it in your hands. But the good ones seem to be extremely expensive. Correct me if I'm wrong, John.
I've got a pair here. These are, or when I bought them about 3 years ago, they were about £400, which, you know, it seems to be a lot for a pair of binoculars, but I use them probably more than anything else. And they're great for other things like bird watching. I think they change binocular viewing. They make it a completely different sport. It is like looking at a monitor. And I've been delighted with these. And I've not yet dropped them. But it's a big investment. Now, this is the sorry, this is the 10 by 30s. This is the Canon one. There is an 8 by 24, I think, which people think is a bit small for astronomy. And then they go up a bit. There's a 15, I think, by 50 or 12 by 50, but they're getting much more expensive and you can't find them anyway. So there you go. I've also got a pair of these, if you can see them on my stupid, my virtual background keeps cutting things out. But there we are. These are essentially like a pair of, these are like a pair of opera glasses. They only magnify by 2 times. And the idea is that you have a very wide field of view and you just see more stars. So the sky looks a bit more like it does on a star atlas rather than bulked out thing that it does. I do find them from night to night, the way they perform varies hugely. That's because the sky brightness is varying quite a lot depending on the weather. So some nights I use them and I'm not very impressed. The other nights, I think they're very, very revealing. They're at their best in a dark site, of course, but you can pick these up for about, I think there's a version around about 80 quid, the cheap ones, but they're all essentially the same optics. I don't think there's any point. There is a model, the Vixen model, which is over 200 quid. Well, that would be silly to pay that kind of money for it. But there you go. I mean, if I hold them there, you'd hardly think there was an optical or an astronomical instrument, but it is. So there you go.
I was going to say just one other thing, and I know it happened to me years ago, and it also happened to a couple of ex-members of the society. If you buy a pair of binoculars, you're reasonably okay to, you know, you don't have to need too much advice to get a good pair of binoculars. I've seen people buy telescopes and 3 years later the telescope is still in the box. It's never been taken out. Or else the telescope is put together and then people find it's too unwieldy to move it from where they've assembled it to take it outside. I know it's a big generalization, but there used to be a binocular and telescope shop about a mile away from where I live. It's moved now. And if you went in, they had 2 assistants. One was primarily an astronomer. The other was primarily an ornithologist. And if you weren't careful, you'd get the wrong advice from the wrong person. So, you know, because I went in and I said, I want some, you know, like you just said, Steve, a tripod for a binocular. And this guy said, you don't need a tripod for a binocular, just hold them in your hand. I thought, no, there's a slight difference between observing birds in daytime and, you know, setting up something at nighttime to look at the stars, where, dare I say, you're concentrating on a single object and you want to keep it steady. And I find with the binoculars, the one disadvantage, if you don't have a tripod or something like that, is your hands shake, particularly if you're holding them over your head. You know, but this guy, the ornithologist, he wouldn't take it. He said, no, you definitely don't need any supporting mechanism for a pair of binoculars. So I didn't go back again.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that wholeheartedly. If you get binoculars and you really want to do anything semi-seriously, you really need to get something like a tripod to stabilize the image, unless you go for the more expensive option that John has just been talking about. Because it's really frustrating if you like, so you can see Jupiter in the sky, like Steve was just saying, and you point the binoculars at it in just your hands, and you can see something, but it's just like a streak of light dancing about. And quite often, especially with my eyes, which are now beginning to get worse as I get older, you don't actually see the you don't actually properly see the moons of Jupiter, and you can't actually count, you know, whether there's 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever. So I would recommend that.
I did actually. The first time I saw the moons of Jupiter was from the study where I am now, leaning on the window ledge with a handheld Russian telescope. I think it's what the Russian army used when they were on maneuvers. And I remember seeing it because I had that support for my elbows. There was no problem. But if I took it outside, and this particular telescope doesn't have a facility for sticking a tripod on it, you're all over the place. You really are struggling.
Yeah. I think as bird watching goes, you're very often in a hide and you can just prop your elbows on a shelter in front of you.
Yes, yes,
Mm.
yes.
Yeah, because we've got the bird sanctuary down the road, and so you hide there, and they're very neatly put leaning window ledges or whatever you call them at different heights.
And can I say also, Robin, because I haven't done obviously as much bird watching as you have, but when I have done a little bit of bird watching, the angle of I'm holding the binoculars at usually doesn't go up to 90 degrees above my head, but very often with astronomy, I want to see something directly above me, and I can't hold my hands up there with the, forever without some way of stabilizing them.
Can I just mention a few things? One answer to that is a brush, a sweeping brush, long handle sweeping brush. If you hold it upside down, if it's all dusty, put a rag over it, but rest your binocs on there and you'll find this exceedingly comfortable. The other thing you need is a good adjustable deck chair, sort of garden chair thing that you can adjust really low. So it's almost like lying down when you're sat on it, and that combined with a brush, and you're very comfy.
The only trouble is you might fall asleep and the brush bangs you on the head.
Something, another measurement apart from diameter and magnification is something called eye relief, which is to do with how far your eyeball has to be away from the eyepiece lens. And a good pair of binoculars will have a long eye relief, which is very good for people who normally wear glasses for long distance seeing. So if before you buy, just check what the eye relief is and see if glasses are mentioned. And most eye cups nowadays, I've got one here, are rubber, so they can be peeled back. It'll give you an extra few millimeters before your glasses start to bash against the lens. If I can just show you this, this is half of an old binocular that lost its alignment. There's not much you can do with one of these roof prism types once they lose the alignment. So I cut it in half, and I don't think you can see that that's got a little bit of solar film on it, and it's actually just quite a nice magnification for looking at sunspots. It's something like 10 or 12 times magnification, so you'll get the whole of the disk of the sun in quite easily. And so long as you do it right and you use proper solar film, you've got quite a nice way of looking at sunspots. Just carry it around if you've got. You can, of course, do it to both lenses of a pair of binoculars and use a whole pair of binoculars.
Which end of the binocular, the monocular, do you put the solar film on?
The far end, the objective.
Okay.
Where the biggest glass is. But make sure you do it firmly in such a way there's no way that it can fall out. And make sure you've got some sort, I had to improvise that, some sort of cover, because you don't want to damage the film. Once it's damaged, it becomes dangerous.
Sorry, but one of the things I was going to mention earlier, by the way, was talking about binoculars, was for children, children doing astronomy, whatever. Binoculars, even big binoculars, are I've seen children relatively easy to handle, So, and I can remember when I was a child, using my dad's binoculars to, basically to look at merchant ships out at sea and things. But, I got quite used to handling binoculars, didn't find it a problem at all. So it's kind of almost like, we've already mentioned about the weight problem, Andy mentioned, and I've found that with the telescope. Sometimes I feel I'm lugging this thing outside. And the time it takes me, and I get outside, and then it's all cloud cover. So, I thought, well, is it worthwhile taking it out? You don't really have that problem so much with binoculars because they're fairly easy to use, and you can move with them, quickly.
Yeah, I thought Rob made a very good point about eye relief, because and if you are buying a pair of binoculars, really go into where you're buying them with your glasses on and try them. Modern optics is so good now. The eye relief depends on the design of the eye lens. In the older binoculars, they had very simple designs which had a very short eye relief. But now most eyepieces have improved to the extent the eye relief is quite good. But it's always certainly worth checking.
Just one thing: if you're wearing glasses, but for just normal long or short sightedness, you can just take your glasses off and look through. You'll have to adjust the focus slightly differently on the binoculars. It's if you've got forget the name of it now, or the shape of your lens, the lens isn't right.
Concave or convex?
Astigmatism.
Yes, yeah, astigmatism. If you need your glasses for that, then you've got to wear them looking through the binoculars or your telescope like these. But certainly, I just take my glasses off. I could end up with them on the top of my head. Forget where I put them, obviously, and just look straight through the binoculars. I find that.
Actually, using a telescope, you can cope. I've got astigmatism in both eyes, but I prefer to use a telescope without them because the exit pupil is normally very small on a telescope, and you're just using the center portion of your lens, and you can more or less cope.
Aware of the time, folks. So we've got sort of 15 minutes of what I call normal time left, although I'm happy to stay here till midnight. Can we just open the discussion out now to just about any astronomical topic, but you can continue by all means talking about binocs as well. Would anyone like to ask any question?
Yeah, why is it so dark at night?
Preferably another one. Go on, Dave.
Just a question still on binoculars. Is there any difference in suitability for astronomy between the binoculars that just look like two parallel tubes and those that are like the ones Steve was using, which have got a right angle double bend in halfway along? I'm not sure of the technical terms for the two optical systems, but do you know what I'm talking about?
No, both systems are perfectly good and perfectly good optically. There's just that the ones with the prisms are a little bit more cumbersome.
Right. Thanks.
I think the bigger the lenses on them as well, sooner or later they've got to start flaring out just so that you've got the clearance.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen any large, like 70mm objective roof prism binoculars.
No, no, the large ones are always the prism ones.
They wouldn't be far enough apart, would they?
Yeah, that's. I mean, you can get them much bigger than that. Much bigger than. Sorry, I'm pointing at something off screen. But you can get them much bigger than that. But then they do start to get some quite serious piece of kit.
Steve, how easy is it to take pictures of things through the binoculars?
I've never tried it, but so I'm not speaking from personal experience. But if you Google. If you just Google pictures taken through binoculars, it's obvious. Okay. You can see people doing it with, obviously with phone cameras, and the monoculars. I've seen one that kind of comes with a smartphone mount.
All right.
Its own little tripod. I think it was on Amazon. It had its own little tripod. I don't know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It came with a smartphone holder. So it was obviously intended, for taking.
It's tricky. You just need a very steady hand.
Yeah.
You can get you can get a gadget just on Amazon or something. I see that you fasten your phone onto the binoculars.
Oh yeah.
I'm just looking at one now. Yeah, I didn't realise you could get those things.
They're absolutely great. They once they're aligned and they're set up for your particular phone, you can just quickly whip them on and off The difficulty is with your phone if you're thinking of taking astronomical photos of anything but the moon, because your phone might have problems trying to focus. So you want to play about with your phone settings first. But if it's the moon, then it can see it very easily and it focuses quite quickly.
Excellent, thank you.
The big advantage is that you're looking through the eyepiece with that little thing, but on that side you're seeing an enormous great picture, like you're seeing now.
These gadgets for attaching a smartphone to optics, they can be very expensive. But if you go to China, to a firm called AliExpress, that's AliExpress, you can get a very satisfactory one for about £3. It's so cheap, it's ridiculous, but they do work very well. So if you want something to do that, just think about that. I mean, I bought the Celestium ones, which are a lot more expensive than that, and they've got all sorts of adjustments. But these AliExpress things are very, very good.
Ah, well, thank you, thank you.
Very worth thinking of.
Any more questions, please?
Yeah, when we can see some sky.
Has anybody actually been able to properly visualize either the asteroid that passed by the closest approach on the 18th, or I know that some people were trying to take pictures of them. I didn't see any that were particularly fantastic, although I did see a fantastic video that I think Ivor took of this thing sort of drifting with a star field in the background. I haven't seen any really convincing pictures of the thing. And what about this comet as well, this other object?
I think John has taken a few pictures of the comet and the asteroid.
But which one? Comet Leonard, which is the bright one, is we can't see it. It's in the south. It's a southern thing.
Right. What's the one?
Sorry,
what's the one in the northern hemisphere? What's it called? I can't remember now.
Well, there are 3 or 4 that are sort of magnitude 10, 9. I mean, I've done a couple this week.
Well, you see, I mean,
they're not naked eye, they're not binoculars even.
Can they be visualized with a decent pair of binoculars? I mean, that magnitude, or is it too dim?
Not in Leeds, I wouldn't think. The sky is just too bright.
Yeah.
These binoculars of mine were great for, when NeoWise was here, because it turned up about a couple of weeks after I got them. But that's really on the bright end of the scale for comets.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could see that with a naked eye.
Well, yeah. I could once have found it with the binoculars.
Yeah. I took binoculars and just the back of Beckett's Park, you know, where it sort of have a clear view over to the northern skyline of Leeds. It was just fantastic. Very good.
To see that, Neil, you'd managed to find your phone mount. Neil?
Sorry?
I say, did I see there that you managed to find your phone, a phone mount?
I found the attachment thing, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One of them. I can't remember how much it was, but I haven't tried it on anything recently. I tried it on a thing that I bought some time ago, and it wasn't that good. But the thing that I bought some time ago was one of those little binoculars, but it wasn't a very good quality one. But I do have, well, I've got 3 telescopes, you know, and I'm thinking of maybe trying it on there with my mobile phone.
Can you show us that attachment?
Just,
that's what I've been talking about from AliExpress.
Yeah, that'll be it. Probably is. Yeah.
Yeah, if you order it from China, it's about £2 or £3. If you go on eBay, people are buying them up and selling them for a tenner.
But,
So be careful.
yeah,
But they are very highly recommended.
but it's got to fit on that. You see, your scope. You know, because
Well,
your
it has an adjustment.
camera goes on that bit, and then you've got to fit that on your scope. So you might have to put some.
Well, I mean, the one from AliExpress has an adjustment for that. It's fully adjustable.
Oh, this one isn't that adjustable.
Ah, and that must be a different one then. Yeah.
It's the same principle, but just same design.
I found a picture of the passage of this asteroid on the 18th. Would you like me to show it you?
Yeah.
Off the internet.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's almost invisible, but that bright star has been magnified in the top right, and you see a very faint streak. I don't know how many minutes it took to produce that streak, but that's what it looked like, and that was at its closest. I'm afraid I don't know anything about who took it, but it was going through Cetus at the time. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what you see, virtually nothing.
Well, I tried really hard to catch it, but it was just too fast. So, and the sky being bright as well, it just gets smeared out so much my camera couldn't pick it up. But I mean, I navigated to the right place and everything, but that was a long shot anyway.
What speed is it traveling at, this thing? Do we know?
It was doing about, oh dear, was it 2 degrees an hour? No, wait a minute. Yeah, something like that. Relatively quick. Much faster than an ordinary asteroid or even an ordinary comet, but not as fast, say, as a satellite or something going across the sky.
Typical asteroid.
So I don't know.
Typical asteroid speed, according to space weather, it's anything from about 5 to about 20 kilometers per second.
Wow.
It's fast.
Fast. Yeah. Yeah.
Any more questions, folks? Very valuable time, this. Been quite good so far.
Is everybody doing the let's count the stars in Orion and send it off to the Paul Marchant's light pollution campaign thing?
Where I am, I get 5, so this is a waste of time.
Yeah,
I don't get that much many more in the middle of Headingley, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I didn't bother last year because I was so miffed with what they did the year before, because they had places, 1 or 2 places claiming that they'd seen 70 stars, and wherever people sent them, they simply put on the chart. And I actually sent them an email saying, you ought to be careful with this because nonsense is being sent. But it's largely a publicity campaign for the CPRE in any case. I didn't get a reply. My total around here on a very good night is about 22, I think. That's a very, very good clear night. And also for the blurb that they put out thus far that I've seen for this year, it may be different if you actually get more information when you actually want to undertake the survey, but they don't mention which stars in Orion you're supposed to look for. Always previously they say, well, don't count the 4 outer stars in Orion, which causes a great deal of confusion, and they haven't said anything like that this time, unless it's in some supplementary information. So it's a bit confusing, and comparing year on year, if they change the rules without saying so, isn't very helpful.
Okay. I might do anyway.
Rod, you were saying about it's hard to align binoculars when they're out. I think I've been looking at mine, and mine seem a bit misaligned. I think the kids might have got hold of them and dropped them. I was reading you can try and coordinate them, but it seems like a bit of a hassle. I don't know.
the different binocular makes have got different ways of doing it, and a lot of them have no way at all of doing it, but there are things that you can do to cheat. The old-fashioned back 4 prisms, the one that goes through 2 right angles near the eyepiece, they're the easiest to adjust if you can get into them.
I bought a pair of what make were they? They were quite a good make, and I bought them, and they never looked right. They weren't. They didn't seem to be properly collimated, and I eventually I found I'd lost the receipt, but I found it again, and I sent it back to the manufacturer, and they actually replaced them, and I've got a pair that work now.
Okay, maybe mine have always been bad. I don't know.
Another advantage of going to try them from a real shop. They can check the collimation.
Yeah. I bought quite a few of these sort of little specials for sort of 12, 15 quid, something like that. And they never lasted very long. The optics were fine, a bit lightweight, but as they wouldn't stand any knocking at all. I did look about 6 or 8 months ago on YouTube, and there are little screws, aren't there, with the normal sort of poro prism binoculars, the right angle jobs, where you can adjust the things. But actually I found that with some of these, it's worth trying just to partially unscrew one of the objectives. They're often a bit stiff at first, but because they're not actually at right angles, as it were, they're at a slight angle mounted onto the binoculars. And if you turn one of the, partially turn one of the objectives, often the collimation will come, well, good enough again for general use anyway, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. I've come across that.
Sometimes those objectives are also locked in with little grub screws as well. So you might find under the rubber grip 2 or 3 grub screws to loosen first.
Okay. Good. I've been just using one eye.
Bring them over on an observing session. Let's have a look at them.
Yeah, okay. I'll do. I usually got them with me, actually. But...